Becky Dowd, and this is The Journey to Salvation. Join me as we walk alongside real people and hear the unique journeys that led them to faith in Jesus. Today, my guest is Josh Busby. Hello, Josh.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
So, Josh, got to meet you a few weeks ago at a Christmas Eve service where your mom is ministering, and your mom was on my podcast, episode 18. I think your episode's going to follow hers. I'm not 100% sure yet, but she is episode 18. So if you want to go and listen to her episode first and then listen to yours, then that would be very interesting to hear the different perspectives of your story.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I can assure you that mine is not going to sound nearly as professional as hers. So
she is a professional. She was worked at the radio station for 20 years or
yes,
so.
Ma'am.
Yeah. So she sounds better than both of us.
I agree with that.
But she's not here today, so it's just me and you to sound pretty good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let's just start with a little bit of your background. Tell us about your time growing up.
I was born into an awesome family, a Christian family. We were in the church all the time. I went to a Christian school through elementary. There was nothing in the way of shortages for opportunities for me to succeed. Everything that I needed, they provided. Most of the things that I wanted, they got for me. I don't have anything in the way of traumatic childhood to attribute my addiction to or anything like that. It's all just a series of decisions, and I was the one who made those decisions, and I was the one who I thought I was the only one living with those consequences. But what people in addiction don't realize is everybody else is suffering with them.
Right.
And addiction is a really selfish thing. You're all about you. It's your time's more important than everybody else's.
Yeah.
Your desires, your cares, your wants, your needs, you're only worried about fulfilling those. And whatever does to anybody else, doesn't matter. And that was something that I used from the time I started doing drugs when I was 13.
Well, let's back up there. Whenever you, so in 13, you were in junior high?
Yes, ma'am.
Or high school?
In between 6th and 7th grade.
That's when you started doing drugs?
Yes, ma'am.
So what led you to first starting that, trying drugs? I don't want to say it was out of boredom, but the whole birds of a feather flock together thing. And I had a very small circle of friends, and they had older siblings, and they were into drugs. And so once you're around something, then, eventually you're going to give in to peer pressure or curiosity or whatever, which nobody held a gun to my head and say, hey, you got to do this. But it was something I did on my own. And right.
I'm not a big believer on the gateway drug theory, but there's an old saying which the first trick you turn is the most difficult, and after that you just get in the car and let the John drive. So once you've kind of opened the gateway or open the door to doing drugs, then you're going to be less and less resistant to trying different things, especially if it's something that you enjoy doing or something that appeals to you.
Well, and when you're around people that are doing those things, of course, you're going to join in on that too. Right.
And the funny thing is I was also around a lot of really good people. I was around, like I said, my family, we were in church all the time. My siblings, none of them did drugs. They didn't drink. They wouldn't get in trouble. And I was raised under the same roof with the same rules and the same expectations and given the same opportunities and had the same advantages that they did. But I wanted to do my own thing. And being raised in the church is a great thing. And then I had the opportunity to rebel against it. And as soon as I was old enough to say, I don't want to go to church, then that's what I did. And man, it was a downhill thing from 13 years old. And everything kind of matriculates down and adds up, and it's a snowball effect. And then one day you're like, wow, man, how did I get here?
Yeah. We're getting a little bit further along than I wanted to right now, but
Right.
I do want to say that when I've talked to people that are over there or past their addiction, I mean, I guess you always have that risk of returning to that. But I hear a lot of them say, whenever you see somebody like that, you think, oh, they're loving it. But I hear a lot of people say, oh, I hated every minute of it.
Right.
And they just couldn't break that cycle of getting out of it.
Well, it's there used to be a commercial that came on television all the time when I was a kid. I mean, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. You see this guy running, and he says, I want to be a track star when I grow up. And then you see a police officer's hand come out and grab him and take him to the ground and put him in handcuffs. And he says, and voice comes over television and says, nobody ever says, I want to be a junkie when I grow up.
Yeah.
And you're not doing it to get high anymore. You're just doing it to not be sick.
Right.
Or you're just doing it because that's all you know to do.
Right.
And you're just kind of stuck in a cycle, and it's a terrible place to be.
So whenever you started doing drugs when you were 13, how long after that do you think that you were probably somewhat dependent or addicted to those drugs?
By 15, I'd been doing prescription drugs and hard drugs, not just pot or drinking or anything like that. And again, you get addicted to the lifestyle of it. My social circle, everybody was doing drugs. So you did drugs too. You get dependent mentally and physically and emotionally on the way that you're living because that's what you're comfortable with. And then you get to a spot where you think, I don't see how I could ever get out of this, or you don't know how to get out of it. And but as the drug use, got more advanced and the drugs changed and then it became a physical dependence, you don't even realize that you're physically dependent on it until you're out of it. And then that's a really bad feeling because it's no longer just a mental or emotional thing. You are just sick, man. And the way that it hurts is like nothing else that I've ever experienced. And you just don't want to be sick anymore.
Right. This morning I was just thinking about, because I didn't have any addictions like that, but I was thinking about, I drink 2 cups of coffee a day. And I think about there's occasionally when I can't drink coffee because of maybe having some blood work done or something. It doesn't happen very often, but, when I don't have that, even 1 cup of coffee a day, I start to get a really bad headache.
Right.
And I've kind of likened that to, it's nowhere similar to that, but it's similar in the way that if you don't do it, you're in pain and hurting, and your body needs that stuff.
Right. Well, the human body is a very resilient thing, but it also compensates when you're putting these chemicals or stimulants or depressants or whatever into your body on a regular basis, and it gets used to that, then it's counteracting it with something else because while your body likes being awake and it likes having energy, it's not going to let you get so far out there that it's affecting your heart rate to some kind of exponential degree.
You're right.
So it's gonna bring you back down. Well, then whenever you don't introduce that to your system at the time that it's expecting you to, then it's still overcompensating because it's still thinking that you're going to introduce this to it. And I can't tell you how many times my body has just completely shut down on me out of self-preservation. They say, I read this thing one time about people who get hypothermia. And once you get into a hypothermic state and your core temperature gets down, 2 or 4 or whatever it is degrees below what it's supposed to be, you basically go into a coma and you will not wake up until your core temperature is back where it's supposed to be. And that may be 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks, but they're not going to wake you up out of that. And your body's not going to allow you to wake up. So your body's got all these different safety checks because it does understand that there's nothing it can do about what you're doing to it, but it can, kind of protect itself at the same time.
Right. So did you graduate high school?
When I was 15, I'd gotten in a lot of trouble here, and my mom and my stepdad, they had been married for several years by then, and I didn't realize how much my addiction was affecting their marriage until my mom came to me and said, we're going to do one or two things. You're either going to go and live with your grandmother out in the middle of nowhere, and these people that you've been hanging around with, you're not going to be around them anymore, or you're going to move down to Florida with your dad. I didn't know my dad, my real dad, and to be honest, I still don't know that much about him. But that seemed like the best option at the time. I moved down there and didn't know anybody the day before my 16th birthday. And when I got down there, I was expected to get a job, and I got a job at a Kmart and worked in a garden center. And as I met people who had drugs, I didn't have the money to buy as many drugs as what I would prefer to have. So I'd say, come on through Kmart, get a big plastic bin, fill it up with whatever you want, come through the garden center checkout line, and I will check you out, and I'll just ring you up for the bin, and then you can walk out with whatever.
Oh, wow.
And so that went on for a couple of months, and I didn't realize that loss prevention was hip to what I was doing until I got arrested. And at that time I was 16, and they charged me for grand theft. I was charged as an adult. I was taken to the Pasco County Detention Center and thrown in with a bunch of other juveniles that were being charged as adults. Had a $250 bond, and my dad wouldn't come get me out. And while I was in there, I took a GED test, a practice test, and completed that. And when I got out, I was fully expecting to go back to school. And when I got out of school, I didn't have a place to live. My dad kicked me out, and school wouldn't let me come back because they said I had too many unexcused absences. So I was homeless at 16 and couldn't really call my mom, say anything about what was going on down there because it wouldn't have mattered if I called or not. I wouldn't be allowed to come back. But to answer your question, at 18, I ended up getting my GED. So I'm not formally educated, but I'm also I'm not an idiot. And that may have been one of my biggest hurdles, is always thinking that I was going to be smart enough to figure something out or get myself out of a situation. And eventually, that ended up getting me to a point which was the best place that I ever arrived at, which was figuring out that I would never will figure it out.
So did you, so let me just say something. You were in addiction for 30 years?
30 years, yes, ma'am.
Okay. From the age 13 to
43.
43. Okay. Which you haven't even been sober for a year yet.
No, ma'am. I'm right about 8 months now.
Yeah. So during that time that you were in addiction for those 30 years, up until the last year or so, was there ever a time that you really wanted to get help and you tried to get help?
No. And I was fearful of consequences only. In 2008, I got charged with transfer of morphine into a facility or near a facility and down in Mississippi, and did almost 3 years in Mississippi Department of Corrections. And even in prison, I was using. I was just never satisfied with the situation.
So even in prison, you weren't drug free.
No, ma'am. Once I got to the work camp, drugs were just as prevalent there as they were anywhere else. And while they drug tested, you knew when they were going to drug test, so you could take whatever measures you needed to in order to pass a drug test.
Wow.
And so, but of course, nobody in my family knew that. Whenever I got out, they all assumed I was 3 years clean, and then you get out and then you're sick again. And then next thing you know, one trip to the dentist and you're in full-blown addiction again. The closest, and this is a crazy thing to say now, but in 2018, I had been on Suboxone, which is an opioid. It's meant to get you off of pain pills or heroin or whatever. In 2018, my insurance changed up, and I went in to get my prescription one day, and it was like $2,600. And I said, well, I can't afford this.
Wow.
Now's the time to get off drugs. Well, at that point, I was smoking pot, and I was taking pills, and I was taking the Suboxone, and I was drinking a lot, like about a fifth of vodka a day. And for 3 weeks, I was in the bathtub of my apartment detoxing, and it hurt so much. I laid in the bathtub because I was constantly getting sick. I couldn't lay in bed because I tossed and turned so much that my elbows and my ankles and my knees and my shoulders would just be pouring blood from rubbing myself raw from turning on the sheets. And then whenever I wanted a bath, I would just turn the water on and hit the shower and sit there and try to go back to sleep. But then when those withdrawals started to decline, I still had bills to pay. And my family, they were really supportive. And I remember telling my mom, listen, I'm fixing to go try to get off this medicine. If you don't hear from me for a while, that's what it is. Well, about 10 days in, she got really concerned because she hadn't heard anything and I wasn't responding. And she was working at the hospital at that time. And so she asked one of the doctors there, hey, what's this like? What's this going through it? And they said, you need to call 911. Somebody needs to get over there. He could be in there having seizures. He could be, he could be dead in the bathtub for all you know. So she starts freaking out, and she says, we're fixing to take you to a facility. We're going to pay money to have them do this medical detox. And I told her I didn't want to go there because I couldn't smoke pot in that facility, but I could smoke pot at the house, and that helped. And once everything was over and I kind of talked her down and realized I had to go back to work, I had no energy. I also had no drugs. So while I got off Suboxone and I stopped drinking, I stopped taking pills, and I quit smoking pot, I started doing meth. And that would have been early November in 2018. And for 7 years, every single day, I did meth.
Wow.
And looking back on the amount of planning that it takes to not run out of drugs at any given point in time over a 7-year period, man, it's an incredible.
Because that was every single day.
Every single day,
Yeah.
Never missed a day. And because you never consider snowstorms, flat tires, drug dealer being out of town, drug dealer having something else going on, you not having any money, the timing of y'all being able to meet up, not ever coming into fruition. And man, I devoted so much time and effort to drugs that, putting that forth or to something constructive, I could have done some amazing things, but that's not what I was interested in. I was interested in addiction. I was interested in drugs. I was interested in me being satisfied, and that was it.
So were you working some at that time to be able to buy the drugs?
I've always been a functional addict. or what it's phrased as. I've had a job, ever since I was 18, in some really good jobs too. And it's not a McDonald's job, and that's not me saying anything bad about a job at McDonald's, because I'm going to tell you, I worked at McDonald's for 2 days. It's the most difficult job I've ever had in my life, and I couldn't hack it, and that forced me to find something else. And these were also demanding jobs, but it was just different, and mainly it was because I was around so many people that I couldn't handle it. I've always struggled with panic disorders and anxieties from the time I was as far back as I can remember. And I'm sure that I can attribute a lot of that to constantly being on drugs. But, that's just something that I've always dealt with. And I can just consider it to be part of who I was.
Yeah, that's what your mom shared, was that you have always had anxiety.
Yes, ma'am.
And you never could sit still, which some of that could have been drug related, but
a lot of it was.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you think back on all the arrests. I can't tell you how many times I've been arrested, or how many times I've been in jail, or how many times I've been bonded out, or how much money they've spent on bonding me out. You think, man, why do I always get arrested, especially on a holiday where the holiday was on a Monday? I remember 9 years in a row, for Memorial Day and on Labor Day, I'd get arrested that Friday and have to stay in there, until Tuesday, because court wasn't in session.
Yeah.
Till the point where I just didn't go out at all. And doing drugs or having drugs on you is always going to lead to more complications, because whether I wanted to legitimize or justify my drug use as being, I'm not selling drugs, I'm only doing drugs to work more. I'm only doing drugs to be able to make more money, to be able to buy more things for my kids, to be able to pay my bills. Drugs are still illegal, and it wouldn't be an issue up until I got pulled over, because I always had drugs on me. So, but to answer your question, I was not ever one to have to steal or have to do something malicious in order to get drugs, because I always had a job.
Right.
And that was really one of the identifiers to my family that I was doing good, is because I wasn't constantly asking them for money, or I wasn't constantly asking them to pay a bill. But I can tell you that I can mark where my addiction, and it wasn't so much drugs as it was gambling, got really bad, is because I started asking my family for money and coming up with these ridiculous stories, man, thinking back on it and looking back on the details that I would provide and how long these stories were, and just...
Yeah, your mom said that the more detailed the story was, the more she knew you were not telling the truth. And
I think that they got tired of hearing it, and they were doing whatever they could to pacify me, because everybody was in denial. I was in denial that my addiction was that bad. I was in denial that I was addicted to gambling. I was in denial that I was, 30, 35, 40 years old, 43 years old, and couldn't figure it out, man. Just, I look at people all around me. I look at my siblings and say, man, what's wrong with me? But
did you feel like you would always be in addiction?
It was all that I knew.
Since you were 13.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not because I wasn't provided opportunities to get out of it, because I was. Man, my family they're amazing. And they went above and beyond, and up to the point where it became an enabler. They just wanted
you to be better.
They wanted so badly for me to be better that they were willing to do anything that they had to do in order to sustain me until I could get to that point.
Right.
And John 3:16 Ministries was something I've been hearing about since 2010 when I was in prison. One of my dad's I call him my dad. He's my stepdad. One of my dad's nephews sent me a letter, and I very rarely got mail there. And I remember opening it up and saying, man, of all people to write me, my mom gets me a Jesus pen pal. That's wonderful. And I didn't even read it because I just wasn't receptive to it. Mm-hmm. And as time would get on, and I would be arrested again and again and again, and they'd mention my cousin and my other cousin that I grew up with that graduated from the ministry. Mm-hmm. And they'd mention John 3:16, and they'd say, if you just go here to try to get help. And my grandmother would beg me, and my mom would beg me, and my aunt would beg me. And then I thought having kids, that would settle me down, which it did to an extent because I wasn't out running around, but I was still on drugs, and I would still get pulled over, and they'd still be illegal, and then I'd still wake up in the same situation. Mm-hmm. And as far as spirituality is involved, that's the only time I prayed. I would pray for God to get me out of that situation. God, just get me out of here and I'll do better. Get me out of here and I'll do whatever you want. Get me out of here. And my transactions with God were just solely based on Him meeting my needs, and that was it. Because the minute I was out, I'd forget about even praying. I would go to church with my grandmother, especially as she got advanced in age, because it meant so much to her. Mm-hmm. But also because I knew she was going to give me money before I left. And if I had anything to do with somebody, it's because I stood to gain something out of it, whether it was people or God. Mm-hmm. And that was it, because I was selfish and I didn't care about anybody else other than me. And looking back on it now, you say that you love your family and you love your parents and you love your kids, and that I hated myself more than anybody in the world, but I didn't love them enough to stop doing the two things that I needed to stop doing, which was drugs and gambling. And I loved myself too much to do anything different, because at the end of the day, my selfish desires were the only things that I was concerned with. And I was going to fulfill those desires no matter what. And I didn't care how it affected anybody else.
When did your gambling addiction start?
COVID. Not that I was a social butterfly, but once I stopped being able to get out and do anything, then I kind of picked it up. And it's really weird. People think about gambling strictly being at the casinos, but that's not where I did a majority of my gambling. It was all on my phone. Mm-hmm. And the thing about gambling is, I believe it's the worst addiction. Not to downplay any other addiction, because they're all terrible. Mm-hmm. But you can only drink so much, and you can only do so much drugs, but you can spend money until you don't have it. Mm-hmm. And then just in the blink of an eye, it's gone, and you realize, man, you just compromised everything about your life, and you can't go get gas to get to work the next day. Mm-hmm. But you're so caught up in it in the moment, and you're not even playing to win, because I won an exponential amount of money. And I want to clarify, when I speak on the drug use and I speak on the gambling, I'm not glorifying any of that stuff. But it is important for me to talk about those things, just so everybody's aware of what God has delivered me from.
Right.
And with the gambling, and I'll fast forward a little bit, because through the good jobs and everything, I was still in a day-to-day struggle, not just with the drugs, but financially, and I was leaning more and more on my family, and things were, progressively getting worse and worse. And my grandmother passed, and that was a terrible day, just because my grandmother was the most amazing person that I've ever met. I never heard her cuss. I never saw her smoke a cigarette or have a drink. She was always in church, and she was always my biggest supporter. Even when my mom or my aunt, they would be sick of my crap, my grandmother would always be there. And I was gambling real heavy, and I'd hit these little benchmarks. I'd get 50,000 in my account, 75,000 in my account, 100,000 in my account, 125,000. And I'd say, all right, when I get to 150,000, I'm quitting gambling. Get to 150,000. When I get to 200,000, I'm gonna quit gambling. And I got up to $180,000, and then 4 weeks later, it was gone. And I can't tell you how difficult it is to lose that much money in that period of time, but it's not an easy thing to do. And in 4 weeks, it's absurd.
Were you using that money to live off of, or to buy drugs, or just to keep gambling?
All of it. It was and just being frivolously on the dumbest things that I didn't really need, while also neglecting to pay for the things that I needed. And even when having all that money, I'd still lean on my family for money. Up until I was unable to contact them anymore.
Were they aware of your gambling addiction?
I don't think that they knew to what degree it was. I had mentioned before that I had lost a couple $1,000, and I remember sending the text to my mom. I still got it in my phone. And she said, "Thank you so much. I feel like this is the first time that you've ever been honest with me about something." But I still wasn't being honest. I'd lied about how much money I needed to borrow so I could not only pay my bills, but so I'd still have enough money left to get drugs and to gamble on. And as I'm losing this money, you're seeing it go down incrementally, and then it jumps back up. But I wasn't playing to win. I was just playing to lose, because I would never stop. And 9 days before I ended up going to the ministry, I was in a suite at Southland Casino Hotel. I stayed in the same room every day. It was room 1802. And they let me stay there as long as I wanted to, and never paid a bill on it, because they wanted me there because I was spending a lot of money. And I think in the 2 months leading up to me going to the ministry, I spent about $400,000 there. I had $2.5 million wagered online for the year. And it's just crazy, crazy money, man.
And that's unreal almost.
It is. And which in the moment, you're not thinking much about it, because you're just caught up in the now of it. But 9 days before going to the ministry, I was in my suite, and it was about 4 a.m, and I'd lost a little money downstairs, and I had, I think, about $11,000 in my safe, and I'm online, and I'm on online casinos on my phone, and I hit for $24,000, and 30 seconds later, I hit for $28,000. Well, I cashed out from the online casino. Money goes to, I get my Litecoin, cash it out, send it to my bank. My accounts had different limits on it of what I could take out per day. That was set up, that was supposed to be a safety stop for me that I'd set up to only be able to take out $5,000 a day out of these accounts, but then I'll just open more accounts. So I went downstairs and went to the teller cage and took out 3 withdrawals. And 45 minutes later, I was back up in my room, and I had spent that $50,000.
Wow.
And I was spending $1,000 every 8 seconds. And I got in my room, and all the lights are on, and I'm looking, and I've got shoes everywhere and brand new clothes everywhere and brand new, just ridiculous stuff that I'd buy. $100 platter of pancakes that I hadn't touched, that I just ordered because I had money to do it. Cash in my safe, and a big pile of drugs on the table. And I was sat down, and it was the first bit of self-evaluation that I had done in a long time. I thought, man, you've got all this stuff, and I'm miserable. And I just didn't understand it. And used to, when I was miserable, I would just buy something that I felt like would satisfy me in that moment. But it was so fleeting that nothing satisfied me or nothing sustained me. And everything that I did was sin-centric. And there was nothing wholesome about it. There was none of that stuff is really, man, like it says, don't lay up your treasure on earth where rust and moss can destroy it. All that stuff, man, I wouldn't care about any of that stuff. No matter what I did, nothing satisfied me or sustained me. And it was as bad as I'd felt in a really long time, because that was the moment that I realized that I didn't have anything in my life that I cared about. My family had distanced themselves from me. They had blocked every form of communication out of self-preservation because I would manipulate them so bad. My daughters up to that point hadn't spoken to me in 6 months. I would send my daughters money on Venmo, and they would send it back because they didn't want to have to talk to me. I'm talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old girls, and I've got 20-year-old twin daughters, and they're the best thing that I've ever had a part of. And I love them more than anything, but not love them so much that I'd stop doing these things. The next day, I get this job offer, and I accept it, and I'm like, bam, I'm back in the game. Because at this point, I'd been arrested in Union County, Mississippi for possession of a controlled substance, paid this huge cash bond to get out of there, and lost my job because of it, because I was in a work vehicle, and just things weren't going my way for a minute, then all of a sudden they were. And I'm on the up and up, and then I'm losing everything. I get this call, I get this job. So my immediate thought is, well, I got something to fall back on. I'm going to go downstairs and gamble. Go downstairs and spend all the cash that I had in my room. At my grandmother's funeral, I saw my cousin who had graduated from the ministry from John 3:16 in 2014. And that's the first time I'd seen him in 15 years. So I thought, well, I'm going to hit him up, maybe get some money. And so I hit him up and said, hey, brother, I hadn't talked to you in a while, going through a rough patch. I start this job next week. I was going to see if maybe I could get some money from you. Kind of hold me over.
And he was probably full aware you were on drugs.
He had a good idea because he knew I'd always been on drugs. He and I used to be in addiction together, and but he had been doing good ever since graduating the ministry. But he acquiesced, and he sent me $500 or something. It took him longer to send the money than it did for me to spend it. So Friday afternoon, I'm kind of in a bad spot again, but still banking on this job. So Saturday comes and get an online casino bonus and blow it. And Sunday comes and looking forward to this job. And I said, well, I'm going to hit him up again and see if he'll send me some more money. So I texted him. He's not responding. I'm super high this whole time. Mm-hmm. So I get interested in something else and kind of lose track of it. Monday morning comes. I'd been up all night, and it's funny looking back on it. It's not funny, but it's ironic that I was always awake, but I was always late. I was perpetually late for everything because nobody's time was more important than mine. And it's just so selfish, man. And you just don't realize it at the time because that's the nature of addiction. It's just a selfish thing. So I'm running late, get to this job, and I'm heading into Memphis, and it's, early May, mid-May, and it's unseasonably cool for May. I got my heater on. I'm going up the flyover on 40 East, and all of a sudden, just check engine light, boom, smoke starts pouring out from underneath the hood of my car, and it dies. And I'm thinking, man, this is crazy. I'm going to lose this job because I'm not going to make it. And I'm literally rolling back down the hill, just kind of thinking about everything. And I get a notification on my phone, and it's my cousin. Read the text preview. Said, hey, brother, sorry I hadn't gotten back to you before now. I've been smallmouth fishing in the middle of nowhere. I hadn't had any service. I can't send you any money because I'm worried about you. But if you ever want to change your life, here's the number to John 3:16 Ministries. I can't repeat what I said aloud, but I was not receptive to his attempt to help me at that time. So roll back down the hill and rush hour traffic on a Monday morning in Memphis, and people are flying by me, and I'm just trying to get off the side of the road. I had several other job opportunities. All I had to do was accept them. Mm-hmm. Get the car towed back to my grandmother's house, and I started accepting these jobs Monday afternoon, just waiting on somebody to get back to me. Monday comes and goes, and it's nothing. Tuesday comes and goes, and nothing. Wednesday afternoon, my aunt and my mom, they had a group message with me because they wouldn't speak to me individually. And they said, look, you got to figure something out. You're not just going to sit out there. So they're applying pressure, and I'm feeling it. And still none of these jobs are calling back.
Now, was this in May of 2025?
No, 2025, just a few months back. And things are just as bad as they've ever been, and nothing is happening. So I said, all right, well, I'm fixing to go out here and figure out what's going on with this car, fix the car, get mobile or whatever. So I started taking the car apart and get everything taken apart, and a freeze plug on the engine block of the motor of my car had blown out. And this is something that occurs when there's extreme overheating in a motor. Mm-hmm. The steam builds up in there, and the water pressure, and the pressure is so great behind it, it'll just blow this cap out, keep you from melting your motor down. Well, there's several other things that are put in place to go out before that. Your water pump, your thermostat, radiator hose is supposed to bust Your overflow is supposed to kick out. And all those things were good. It was just this freeze plug, 1 in a million type thing. And I'm thinking, well, I get a $10 freeze plug, $50 worth of antifreeze, and I'll be back in the game. So I start texting people, everybody.
Because you didn't have the money for...
Oh, I had the money. More importantly, I had a lot of drugs, and that was my bargaining tool. I'll give you $300 worth of drugs. Take me to go get these $60 worth of parts. I mean, it was a really good offer, in my opinion, that I was throwing out there. And nobody is texting, and nobody is calling, and nobody's answering. And that goes Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning, and I still hadn't been asleep. So all my effort and all my time is being put into this thing, man, into just getting something to go my way. Around noon that Friday, I get another text from my mom, my aunt. What have you figured out? And I hadn't figured out anything. So I looked down at my phone and I thought, man, somebody has got to. There's no way somebody hadn't jumped on this yet. I looked down at my text, and pinned to the top of my text messages is a text from my cousin about the number for John 3. I had no idea how to pin a text or unpin a text, but I knew that's not what I wanted to be looking at that time. So I was going to figure out how to get that off my screen. So I clicked on it, and I'm fidgeting with other stuff. And when I clicked on it, I called the number, and I didn't even realize it until I hear somebody saying, hello, hello. It's like, oh, crap. I hang up. I said, well, that's wild. So I'm sitting there, and about 10 seconds later, our phone rings from this number that I didn't recognize, and out of Charlotte, Arkansas. I said, man, that's them for sure. And so I answered. The guy, I said, yeah, somebody called this number. I said, yeah, man. I called it, but it was an accident. And he said, I'm going to tell you, brother, nobody calls this number on accident. I said, maybe you're right. And he said, well, what's going on? And it wasn't a conversation that I really wanted to have at that point. But this was the first person that had shown any interest in talking to me for so long. And I was like, man, I'll talk to him. So I start telling him about what's going on, and told him I just want something different, man. Because I was in such a bad place, especially mentally at that point. I just didn't care what happened. So he says, well, I tell you what, we'll do your phone interview. And if you pass that, then I'll tell you what to do next. Come to find out a little while later, that was his first week on the phones. And they are prohibited from calling out on that number, to the point they'll be dismissed if they get caught calling out, because you're not allowed to have any communication. And more importantly, the ministry is never going to say that they contacted you. If you want help, you're going to contact them, because you need them. They don't need you. So that was just one of those God things. So we did my phone interview, and I'm going through it, and he's just like, man, that's crazy. And I'm like, man, this guy's saying that it's bad, that it must really be bad. And we get done with the phone interview, and he said, all right, be here Sunday morning at 9:15. They said, Josh, if you really want help, I'll see you Sunday, and this place will change your life. So I contacted my mom and my aunt. Said, well, I did my phone interview with John 3:16. They said, be there Sunday morning at 9:15. The next message I get from them is, we'll gather up everything you need. Do not leave that house. If you do leave the house, don't ever come back. Mm. So I sat there Friday night and Saturday, and I'm still, just high the whole time.
You're probably still waiting on somebody to get back with you on
right. I just
helping you with your car.
Knew something was going to break my way, and I did not want to miss that text. And Sunday morning, my aunt texts at like 5 a.m. And I remember thinking, man, why are you on your way so early? She said, I'm on my way. I got everything you need. Come get in the car. We'll go to your mom's house. We'll leave your mom's house. We'll head to the ministry. So she comes and gets me at 6 a.m. This place is only 2 hours away, so I didn't really understand why, what the urgency in getting there so early was.
I'm sure they didn't want you to change your mind.
Well, and at that point, I had come to the realization that I didn't have any other option. And a part of me knew that I needed to do something different. Mm-hmm. So we leave, and it's just raining so hard. And I'm going through my phone, and I'm looking at all these different money transactions and adding up how much money I had spent, where it went, and how quickly I lost it. And I'm really, really going through it in the back seat. And I'm hoping I wasn't going to get in. My cousin had already told me, look, they usually don't let people in the first time. If they don't, no big deal. You'll stay with me for the week. We'll try again next weekend. So I was fully anticipating that that's what it was going to be. So I brought drugs with me, a lot of them. And we get there and we're waiting for them to open up the building. And the guilt and the shame are really, really getting to me. Mm-hmm. My cousin shows up and we all go inside. And I'd never been to a praise and worship where it was just praise and worship and there was no sermon. I'd also never been to one that was 2.5 hours long.
So you get there first to go to the church service.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the interview was after that?
Yes, ma'am. And just for anybody who doesn't know already, this is John 3:16 Ministries in Charlotte, Arkansas.
Is it considered a boot camp?
It's a spiritual boot camp for men and women with addiction. And they tell you we don't offer treatment, mm-hmm. we offer the cure. Mm-hmm. And they've been up doing this thing for 23 years, and so I'm sitting there and we're in the back, and they do this thing toward the end of the service. They say, all right, if got any graduates in here, stand up. So 10 or 12 people stand up. My cousin's right next to me. He stands up. I said, all right, if you're here trying to get in, you and the people who brought you, y'all stand up. So me and my mom and my aunt stand up, and they say, all right, graduates, you know what to do. Take them down here and we'll pray for them. So they do the altar call. I told my cousin says, come on, brother, we'll go down there and pray. And I said, I got to use the bathroom. So I go in the bathroom and I do drugs. And I look down at my phone because I'm trying to listen for the song to be over so I know when it's okay to come out. And I'm looking at my phone. I get the email from my online casino, $500 casino bonus. I said, all right, man, this may be a ticket out of here. So I get on my phone, and 90 seconds later, I hit for $9,000 on the online casino.
Oh, wow.
And I said, man, this is it. This is not meant to be. I'm getting out of here. I am contacting an Uber. So that's what I did. I hailed for an Uber. And my cousin comes, knocks on the bathroom door. They're ready to do your interview. I said, okay. So double check the Uber on my phone, stick my drugs and my phone in my pocket, and walk down. Sit in one of the red chairs next to my mom and my aunt, my cousin, a guy, an instructor there. He's one of the main guys there. He's been there for 18 years. He smiles at me real big, and he looks at my mom and says, all right, Mom, what's going on? How long's it been going on? And how bad is it that your 43-year-old son is trying to get into a Jesus camp? And my mom, she says, we're done. There's nothing we can do for him. We've tried. We thought prison would help. We thought he'd get this thing figured out. We've done everything we can do out of self-preservation. We have washed our hands, Josh. And I was already having a bad day, and man, that was really hard to hear, because that's the first time they've ever told me that. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, man, this stinks. And James Ashley looks at me, which is the instructor's name, and he says, probably wondering why I didn't ask you. He said, I don't think you'll be honest with me about anything. He said, you don't even know how bad it is, because it's just a normal day to you. As a matter of fact, you're probably trying to figure out a way to manipulate yourself out of the situation right now. As soon as I know that, I'm going to get up and go to the next red chair, and I'll interview somebody else who may actually want to get in here and want some help. And you're going to have a long, awkward ride home. And then later on, somebody said that I was James Ashley's Samaritan woman, because he just called me out on everything that was going on. Mm-hmm. And he just looked at me and smiled again, and I couldn't even talk. I started crying. He said, well, I can work with that. Why don't y'all go get something to eat while we figure out what we're going to do? I had no interest in eating, but I was interested in where this Uber was at. So I go in the bathroom, do some more drugs, going to check this Uber. My fidgeting around with my phone all the time, I would always somehow or another open my flashlight app and turn it on. So I had it scrolled back 4 pages on my phone. I took it out of my pocket, my flashlight's on, and I looked down at my phone, and it's at 1%. And it died right there in my hands. Oh. I was thinking, man, this ain't my day. And about that time, my cousin knocks on the door. Hey, brother, I got good news, man. You got in. Fixing to take you to your house. I said, oh, that's great. I got all this dope in my hand, and I'm thinking they're going to search me. I don't want to catch any charges. I'm going to flush this dope. So, and it's about the size of a fist. So I put it in the toilet and flush it, and it didn't go down, and try again, and it doesn't go down, and try again, and it doesn't go down. My cousin's knocking on the door. You all right? Yeah, man, never better. And I decided that I'm going to try one more time, and if it don't go down, I'm just going to grab this dope, walk to town, I'll buy a charger, charge my phone. I'll find out where this Uber is at, or I'll buy a used car or something. I'll get back to Memphis. Flushed it again, and down it went. I thought, well, then that's something.
Not what you were hoping for.
No, it's not. It's not what I was anticipating. None of it was to that point. You know, it's crazy how God works. And so they take me over to my house, and I'm in the back of the car trying to charge my phone to find out where this Uber's at. Come to find out, Uber doesn't service Charlotte, Arkansas. I was waiting on a ride that was never going to come. The guys in the house get my stuff inside. My parents or my family gets me in there, and then they take off. And I'd been in the room for what I thought was 30 minutes or so, and I'm just so high still.
Mm-hmm. Were they aware of that?
The people in the house?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes. They absolutely knew. And I thought I'd been in there for about 30 minutes. And it's not because I told them. Mm-hmm. It's just because they'd all been high before, too.
Right. They were all recognize that.
They were all high when they came in there. And I wasn't the first person to ever do drugs in that bathroom, and I won't be the last. And I'm just thankful that I flushed them down the toilet. Because what I didn't realize is, and not that I cared at the time, man, these people are in there trying to get help. And that may be the only time that they ever try to get help. Mm-hmm. And you're coming in there jeopardizing what they're trying to do to change your life, all because you want to be comfortable in your situation. Mm. And it's just so selfish. I'm in a room, and like I said, I thought it'd been about a half an hour, but it had been about 3 hours. Somebody knocks on my door, and it was my house dad, and his name is Cameron. And he's one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. And he opens the door and sticks his head in. He says, "Hey, buddy, mind if I come in?" And I said, "Go ahead." So he comes in and he says, "It's almost dinner time. You want me to show you where the cafeteria's at?" I said, "I'm not hungry." And he said, "I want you to know, nobody comes in here on a winning streak. And nobody gets here on accident. We all love you. We all care about you. Don't worry about what's going on outside that mailbox, because somebody out there is getting the best night's sleep they've got in a long time, because you're in here trying to get yourself together." I said, "But I'm telling you, if you give this place a chance, it will change your life." And man, I'm just ate up with the guilt and shame, and they know that. They've all been in the same boat. And a couple of weeks went by, or a week had gone by, and I started getting real sick. And I recognized the symptoms of opiate withdrawals from when I'd been on pills and been on Suboxone. And it was the first time I came to the understanding that fentanyl really is in everything. You hear people on the street, fentanyl's in everything. You can't trust anything you get. This stuff's in everything. I start detoxing, and I am really, really going through it. And not just with the withdrawals, but the guilt and the shame and just everything. And I'm thinking about all this money and what I could have done with it, and all these good jobs I've lost, and now my family won't talk to me. My daughters won't talk to me. And it's just eating me up. And for the first 28 days that you're there, you're on what you call a blackout period. You're not allowed to have any visitors, and you're required to go to the evening prayer chapel Bible study that is put on by a different resident every night. And they rotate houses so that it's a different person all the time. So on the second Tuesday night in June, a guy that I'd never spoken to, which I had never spoken to anybody at that point, his name was Wiltshire, and he's a really good guy. He's doing the evening Bible study, and I'm just sitting in there kind of going through it. And he says, I apologize. I really don't have anything planned because somebody else was supposed to be doing the Bible study, and he was just filling in for him. He said, so I'm just going to do a little bit of my testimony and a couple of verses that are important to me, and, maybe somebody gets something out of it. So he starts giving his testimony, and he starts telling these details. It was like somebody was reading out of my journal. And just every detail he shared just hit me harder and harder. And I was really trying to hold myself together because I was crying, and I was trying not to just get uncontrollable. And so he goes on through it, and he reads this verse out of the book of Haggai about, he was telling a story about how his car broke down on the way to work with the windows rolled down, and it rained all in his car. And I can't remember what the verse is. It says, I'll destroy everything you've worked for with mildew and blight. I was like, well, that's, crazy. So I wait till after it's over with so I could speak to him, and I tell him thank you for sharing his testimony, and then it really, really hit home. We're walking down the hill. I said, what was that Bible verse you read? I'd like to write it down. So he tells me, and I go in a bedroom and open up my Bible, which I hadn't really been in at that point, and open it up to Haggai. And the first thing that jumps out of me was Haggai 1:6. It said, you eat, but you're never filled. You drink, but you're always thirsty. You put on clothes, but you're never warm. And you earn wages just to put it in a purse with holes. And it was like, oh my gosh, like that's me. That's me in a Bible verse. And then the guilt and shame really, really hit me. And so I started thinking about everything, just the money, what I could have done with the money. Could put my daughters through college. I could have got a pilot's license. I could have gone to Europe and watched every Manchester United soccer game for a year. I could have done so many things. And then the job, my family, my daughters, and the drugs. I'm like, man, how can all these things just keep going wrong? How many coincidences can you have that just don't go your way? And I had to go to the bathroom, and so I stand up in my bedroom, and I take a couple steps, and I start seeing stars, and my ears start ringing. And I'd had seizures coming off of pain pills before. And so I was worried that this is what was going to be, what was happening. And so I got down on the floor so if I started going into seizure, I wouldn't fall in my head. And I just cried out. I said, all right, God, if you're out there, man, now's your chance to show me something, because I don't want to die in the floor at a Jesus camp. And I don't know how long I was down there for, but everything started kind of subsiding. I realized my blood pressure wasn't bad. I wasn't nauseated. I wasn't dizzy. So I knew I wasn't fixing to have a seizure, but I still had to use the bathroom. And when I got up out of the floor, all that anxiety and all that guilt and all that shame were lifted off me like somebody had flipped a switch. And it was the first time I realized that this wasn't all coincidence and it wasn't all bad luck. Mm-hmm. That this was God's perfect plan and a series of miracles to get me still long enough to realize that he had something greater for me than I had ever imagined. Mm-hmm. And I can't put into words what that felt like. But I think about sometimes the parable of the debtors. One person owed 500, one person owed 50. Who do you think appreciated it more? Well, I appreciated it a lot because I had sinned so much. Mm-hmm. And to have that off of me was just something that I never felt anything like it. And it was the best day of my life. And I went into Cameron's room and told him everything that had just happened. And he said, that's what the goodness of God tastes like. Stay in the Bible and you'll get more of that. And that's what I did. And the more you read, the more I would read, the more I'd want to read. And all these parables that didn't make any sense to me before, and all these verses and all the scripture that I just couldn't understand, this stuff starts making sense to me. Mm-hmm. You know, I would hear, there was a resident in there with me who he had a master's in quantum physics and another master's in mathematics or something. Super smart guy. And he was an atheist when he came in. He said, I only came here to appease my family and to discredit religion. So when I got here, I had 4 different versions of the Bible, and I couldn't read anything. He said, I would look at the pages, and it was all just a jumble. He said, that was so frustrating, and that lasted for about a month. Then we did this Bible study one morning, and I wasn't really paying attention to it. And the instructor said, the wise things become foolish, and the foolish things become wise. And he said, it reverberated in my head, and I looked down at my Bible, and I could see it.
Wow.
And he said, then I realized God's putting a block on me so that I realize, yeah, you think you're smart, but you're nothing without me. Mm-hmm. And the next day, he said the second verse I was ever able to read was John 3:16. And he said, and that changed everything. And you're around so many people in there. The miracles are just happening every day. And everybody in there is an answered prayer. Mm-hmm. Man, my family had been trying to get me in there for 25 years. But if I hadn't lost all that money, if I hadn't lost my job, my car hadn't blown up, if I hadn't been homeless, if my family hadn't backed off from me, if my kids hadn't stopped wanting anything to do with me, I'd have never been broken. I would have never come to the realization that I was not going to get it figured out. There was nothing I could do to change things, and I would have never leaned on Christ.
And you wouldn't be here today,
right?
Giving your testimony,
right?
Yeah.
And what we don't understand in the moment is not for us to understand. Mm-hmm. You know, we can't understand God's plans, especially when it doesn't align with our own selfish desires. Mm-hmm. But God's always got our best interest at heart. And now I think about if I hadn't lost all those things and I still had all that money and I still had a good job and I'd just be out there with more money and a good job and lost as a goose because I never knew Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think about now is, man, I know a lot of people that are doing good and got money and are lost. And I want to tell them, man, mm-hmm. I'm glad that things are going well for you, but this isn't it. That's not going to get you into heaven, because to them, I'm just a junkie that graduated from a Jesus camp.
Yeah.
And I get that. But if you can see what God did for me and what God has delivered me from and the change that God has made in my life, where you may not see it in somebody that's never been on drugs.
Right.
But people have seen me in addiction for 30 years. And when I go up to people, I can remember being on Ticket Trail and seeing my uncle, who I worked for 15 years. And I used to have long hair, and I weighed about 40 pounds less than I do now. And I walked up to him, and I give him a hug. And he says, "Hey, how are you doing?" He turns and takes 10 steps, going another way, and drops whatever he had in his hand. Turned around, he says, "I didn't even recognize you." It comes up and gives me a big hug, and that was just the first time that happened. Well, then I became to understand that it wasn't because I didn't have long hair or because I weighed 40 pounds more or because I was off drugs. It was because I was going out and promoting Jesus and telling people about what Jesus had done in my life. And it was just so far from the norm and so far from anybody what they would have expected from me, which is great because it's just such a testament to
what he's doing,
what God's done for me. And I'll be the first one to say, man, I'm nothing without Christ. And if you don't believe that, I've got 43 years of proof and plenty of people who will tell you I wasn't worth being around. I wasn't anybody that anybody wanted to spend time with. I did my testimony at a church last week, and they asked me for what's evidence that Christ is working in your life. I said, man, people want to be in it, and they want me to be in theirs. And that's a big change from somebody being willing to just give you a couple $1,000s to not hear from you.
Right.
Than have a desire for you to be in their life. And it's something only God can do. And I'm extremely thankful for it, and thankful that God took the people out of my life when he did. And I'm not talking about the bad people, because I was the bad people. Mm-hmm. But my family, my daughters, because I don't think that he was burning those bridges. I think he was shielding them from me long enough so I didn't have the opportunity to destroy those relationships beyond repair, because that's what I was on my way to doing, and not really realizing it or caring about it.
Yeah, it seems like you were, everything you were doing, the drugs, the money, the purchases you were making with the money, you were just trying to satisfy something that could not be satisfied. And when you were in John 3:16, you found Jesus, who can only satisfy. Right. They said you got to lose everything you've ever had to get the only thing you'll ever need. Yeah. And you're just feeling a void that you don't understand why you can't just feel that empty spot. Mm-hmm. It's because you're looking in the wrong places. But if you just sit still and just ask, and all you have to do is ask, and be willing to get the response that you get. Not every prayer is answered in the way that we desire for them to be answered. Mm-hmm. Which is good sometimes. Man, a lot of times. Great, because I've got so many years of experience that'll tell you what I want isn't always the best thing for me. Yeah. But God's always got our best interest at heart.
And I'll forever be thankful, and I count it all joy, every bit of that stuff. Because if I wouldn't have experienced those things of how bad things could get on my own, then I would never have experienced the love of Jesus Christ or realized what he's done for me or come to the understanding that Jesus didn't come for the people who are doing good out there, man. Like he came for the sick. He came for the one. To lead the 99. Like I'll forever be thankful for all those bad things, because if I didn't experience them, I'd still just be going through the motions.
Right. So how was it being, after being 30 years in addiction, all of a sudden not being addicted? Because is it like just waking up and into a new world? I mean, I knew it was a gradual thing because of your detox time.
Your desires change. Something I never realized is one of the reasons I was so miserable all the time is because I was dependent upon myself to find joy in anything. Mm-hmm. But even being in the ministry, when you see somebody who'd been in there for 28 days get their first visit, or when my mom came up to me crying because I looked healthy, or I would be sharing something that had happened in my spiritual walk while being in there, and she would just burst into tears, and you see the joy in other people, just because you're not out there habitually messing up. Man, that's a great feeling to go from being a curse to being a blessing. And not only that, but you're not the only one that's in there either. People are getting encouragement every time they come and see God working in other people. My mom's a minister, but she'll be the first one to tell you her faith has been made stronger from seeing what happened with me going in there, because nobody thought, A, that I'd get taken in, or B, that I would stay, or especially to come out of there with God having worked in me the way that he has. And
because you could have left there at any time, right?
They God's will gets you there, but then it's up to you. Everybody gets afforded the same opportunities, but it's just like I was told, and I would tell everybody there. I was a house dad for half my stay there.
So you were there 6 months.
6 months.
And graduated.
And so we'd get new people in all the time. And they'd all be the same situation I was. High, depressed, wondering how they got there. And I'd tell them, nobody gets here by accident. You didn't take a wrong turn to the middle of nowhere, Arkansas, and just pull up at a Jesus camp because you thought you could go in and sit down for a little bit. Like, this is where you needed to be, and that's why you're here. If you could figure it out, you would have done that already. And you see people that are going through it, and they're withdrawn, and it sounds callous. You say, man, I know you're hurting. Yeah, I'm hurting. Good.
Yeah.
I hope it hurts so bad you never have any desire to go back out there to it. And I have enough self-awareness to say, if I ever went back to it, I'd never stop. Because I can't do anything in moderation. The first bit of moderation that I ever displayed was the moment they handed me that Bible. And then all of a sudden I'm, pump the brakes on this Jesus stuff. But then you get your taste of the goodness of God, and God starts delivering you from these things. He tells you, once you've been free, you're free indeed. You don't have to go back to these things.
Because it's just not modifying your behavior. It's a change in heart. You no longer desire those things. You desire him. And understanding that there is no good in you. There is no good in me. But without, with God's grace, you can not only be doing good for yourself, but you can be doing good for other people. And
I started getting these things back, incrementally. But my daughters didn't come see me while I was up there, and I couldn't even be mad at that or get frustrated with it because look at what I had done. Like I had,
because they've never known you other than being on drugs.
There's a good chance they've never seen me sober, But I'd be telling them all the time about how good things were, and it's just lies. And I'd tell my family how good I was doing, and it's just lies. And they got tired of hearing it, and I got tired of saying it. And eventually, you've got to walk that out. Man, I could tell people anything, but there's got to be some proof behind it. Where's the evidence, And they would say, man, I think Josh is a really good guy at heart, but everything came with the but.
Right. It'll just take time to build that trust up with them.
Right. And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity because not everybody gets that opportunity. I'm fortunate to have the opportunity. I'm fortunate to be alive. I'm fortunate that my family would speak to me. And I'm fortunate that God has restored those relationships. But I would tell people when they got there, don't think that you're going to come in here and come to Christ and that everything's going to be great because it's not how it works. You can't think that just because you're telling somebody doing good and you're, you love Jesus and Jesus loves you, that everything's going to be in your favor. And they say, well, where's the blessings? Well, you're not going to hell. Well, there's the biggest blessing. And be thankful for that. And until you start being thankful for that, don't expect other things to come your way. But God will always provide. Even since leaving the ministry, God's provided me with more than what I could have ever expected. And it's not when I go looking for it. It's just when I'm content with what he's given me already and what he's already blessed me with. The freedom in knowing that I don't have to rely on me. And that God's got it all under control. Man, if you can't find peace in that, then I don't know what else to tell you because other than that's what's worked for me.
So you graduated from John 3:16 in November, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And right now you're in a transitional house for a short period of time.
Yes, ma'am. Philippians 3:13 ministry in South Haven, Mississippi. It was it's operated by another graduate of John 3:16, who's also a pastor at the church that I attend every week.
So how do you see yourself using what God has done in your life as you move forward?
I never want anybody to look at me and say, well, he talks about God, but man, look how he acts. I don't want to do anything to kill my witness. But if I can say something to somebody whenever it's spirit-led and it can bring somebody out of a bad spot, or somebody can look at me and say, man, look how happy Josh is, or look how much better Josh looks, or look how great things are going for Josh. I would love for them to ask me, what are you doing different?
Right.
That's Jesus, brother. You can get some of that too.
Yeah.
And it's real easy. You don't.
Because anybody can go to a secular addiction recovery program and stop doing drugs.
Right.
But they're not going to have the Lord in their life.
Right. And how long is it going to last? Everything that I do needs to be to glorify God. And I'm not glorifying God by getting back on drugs, but leading other people to Christ, which is, that's our, discipleship is the obligation. That's what we're supposed to do. And why wouldn't you want to do that for somebody?
Right.
There's a lot of people out there that need to hear, hey, man, there's a better way than what you're going through right now. And there's a lot of people that need to hear, you're never going to figure it out. And
you can't do it on your own.
Right. And a lot of times the last thing you want to hear is the best thing for you to be listening to. So,
Yeah, I think this podcast will help some people that are going through what you're going through, but also your mom's, because hers is really powerful, and what she was doing that probably aided in your addiction, so listening to that would help, especially parents that are going through or have a child that's going through that thing.
I can remember. And it was right before I got off Suboxone, but I texted her one day and I said, Mama, I hope nobody ever looks at you and looks at me and wonders where you went wrong or what you didn't do right. Mm-hmm. And I hope you never ask yourself what you could have done differently, because there's nothing that could have been done. I hope all parents know that. Like, this, it's not something that they did or didn't do right. Like, addiction's a personal choice. Mm-hmm. You can choose to go out there and stay in it every day, or you can choose to find something different. Mm-hmm. But it's my mom does these conferences where she speaks mm-hmm. from the perspective of the parent of an addict, and she's been doing it for a while. And when I learned about that, which was just recently, I think, man. But what's she leaving them with? Like, you're the parent of an addict, but, where's the good news? Mm-hmm. Well, now she has good news. Mm-hmm. Just give it to God. Take your hands out of it. You're not going to fix the situation. Everything that's happening is happening for a reason. And all this stuff is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than a therapist. Mm-hmm. It's bigger than a drug dealer. It's bigger than everybody, and all you got to do is recognize that and just get out of the way and let this stuff happen. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing is, I know that people have been praying for you for years for your recovery, but nobody can change anybody else's heart. Only God can do that.
That's right.
And that's what our prayer can be. We can encourage them in their walk, trying to get them to turn away from drugs, but, only God can change their heart and give them that desire to do that.
Right. And it's 1 Peter 5:10. It's one of my favorite verses. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you to become strong, firm, and steadfast. The only person that can tell you if you suffered enough or not is you. If you're sick of it, then do something different. But that's, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. God wants you to be broken. Mm-hmm. God wants you to lean on him. God wants him to be the only thing that you have left to lean on, so that when all these good things start happening, you can't attribute it to you because you hadn't done anything. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't done anything. But Christ has done a miraculous work in me, and I'm extremely thankful for it, and thankful for all the prayers over all the years that everybody's done, and I'm glad they could be answered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you for joining me today and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me, and I hope somebody gets something out of it, and I don't care who you are, man. Jesus loves you. Mm-hmm. All you got to do is do something different.
Thank you for joining us today. Check out our website at thejourneytosalvation.com. You will find additional information as well as a way to connect to us. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll be notified when new podcasts are available.